Okay, so let's just take a look first at the kind of subscription items. So if I go over to QuickBooks, just remember that when you purchase QuickBooks, so I'm on QuickBooks, this is Intuit's the owner of QuickBooks, and then I'm in the QuickBooks area, which basically I found at the bottom of the page, and I just went into the QuickBooks Online, and you can then look at the different plans that they have here, noting that they have these options for live assistance. So that would be a type of help option that they're experimenting with more availability. Now, QuickBooks has pretty neat programs to try to get QuickBooks experts, trying to give some kind of certifications sometimes for people to be experts within QuickBooks. Now, note that however you're dealing with a QuickBooks expert, whether you're a business owner hiring like a bookkeeper, or you're getting advice from a bookkeeper, or basically a QuickBooks expert within or from Intuit, you want to always try to keep the end goal in mind, which most likely means you're going to be communicating with your CPA firm, tax firm, at least at the end of the year, because that's the end goal. You want, in the United States, we have to at least do the taxes, even if we're a small business. And beyond that, we might need extra financial reporting needs for external reporting and or for loans and stuff like that. That means that we want to keep in the loop the person that's going to ultimately be creating the end product, the tax return at least, which is going to be our CPA firm. So any bookkeepers and whatnot that we bring on board, or any kind of other assistance we have, we want to keep the end goal in the loop typically. Now, so they have this live assistant. So we connect with live experts when you need it. They can provide setup help and bookkeeping guidance in QuickBooks so you can stay organized and run your business with confidence. So I personally, it's for free 30 days. So they're experimenting, it looks like, with this option to see if you want to be purchasing added support. Now, I'm not completely convinced that this is the best way to go yet, but it's interesting option that you might kind of experiment with. You might try out that 30-day trial. Remember that I would basically say you want to talk to Intuit itself when you have technical issues, which means not bookkeeping issues, but the software is not doing what it is, or you need billing help on it. And this is going to be more towards the bookkeeping help, and possibly, most likely, they're setting this up mainly for the setup process, which is mostly the more labor-intensive process, the more difficult process. Once you have that foundation, kind of like an infrastructure, if you're building a city or something like that, you need to have the foundations, you need to have the roads, you need to have the water pipelines in there. Once that's in place, you can build on top of it fairly easily. So one way you might think of this type of help is possibly at least for the setup process, but personally, I would still go to, for help with that, my CPA firm if I had one, to help with that in kind of process setup. If you have a tax preparer, they might help as well. But if you're a business, even a sole proprietor, and your tax preparer doesn't have an accounting background, but mainly does individual income taxes, that might not be the best preparer for you, right? Because as you get more into a business situation, you're going to need a little bookkeeping understanding, even just to create the Schedule C, basically. And then they've got tax help. Save time and effort by seamlessly moving from books to taxes. Then prepare your current tax year return with unlimited expert help to get every credit you deserve. Access live tax experts powered by TurboTax. Now, note that TurboTax is also owned by Intuit, so they're trying to integrate their small business kind of components for QuickBooks and then TurboTax. Now, note that TurboTax might be most useful for types of individual tax preparers that have like a Schedule C type of business. If you have like a partnership or an S corporation, then you might not be using, you probably want to get more expert tax professional help in that case, because your business is probably a little bit larger, probably a little bit more complicated. You're going to have to make another tax return and then have like K-1s that flow through and so on. So just that's number one. Now, Intuit owns other taxes as well, including, I believe, Lacert. but it's a much more expensive tax software, not for individual use per se, but typically purchased by tax firms, although I think you can buy it individually, but it's going to cost a lot more than TurboTax. So they've experimented with some kind of components in the past to try to give line items in QuickBooks so that it can be converted into TurboTax pretty as easily as possibly. But that, as far as I can see right now, I've been playing with it. I've played with it for a long time and tested out. It's not a perfect seamless, move from QuickBooks to TurboTax. You're basically going to generally have to create the income statement and then input that into the tax return in TurboTax, which means that basically you can, in essence, use kind of any kind of tax software because you're going to have to do the data input basically manually. So you want to kind of think about what's the best tax software for long-term use as you have a business. I would think more likely, if you're not a tax expert, you possibly want to get help with taxes beyond possibly a support by Intuit for TurboTax. So again, I would think that this is a very specific type of help that's helping with a specific small business clients. I would think they're going to be somewhat limited in their knowledge as opposed to if you went to a CPA firm that might be able to give you more specialized knowledge. This is my opinion, of course, as a CPA, but so take it, I have my biases, but so that's that option. So you have that option as well that you can look into. Now, also, if you purchase the software and you buy payroll, you can have similar kind of components with payroll. So remember, the options with payroll are, do I want to do payroll within QuickBooks, which means I'm going to have to pay more for it typically, or purchase outside, work with a third-party person like an ADP or a Paychex to help me to process all the payroll. If I do payroll inside of QuickBooks, I want to at least buy the basic payroll plan typically, because in the United States, at least, payroll is quite complex and the software will really help to not make mistakes being easy to make in payroll. And so and that'll help you do the 941s to 940s and so on. But you also could have options for payroll support, added payroll support, which might give you some guarantees on accuracy of payroll and so on and so forth. So that's another option that you might look into, and that will be dependent on the types of clients you're getting and working with. And then what's your integration when you're working on bookkeeping and possibly a third-party firm like an ADP and a Paychex, and possibly your CPA firm. Remember, and you always want to get the CPA firm in the loop, because payroll is also going to be basically reflected on the tax return if you're in the United States, and you have to reconcile what you deduct on the tax return to what you report on payroll, which can be seen on the W-2s and W-3s, 940s and 941s, or else you have an incongruity that you're giving to the IRS, and that'll be a problem, or that could be a problem in the event of an audit. All right, and then we have, you could just look at the Intuit website, of course, intuit.com, and then just go into QuickBooks and search for chats and whatnot, or support on the Intuit website itself. So the website changes. If you go down to the bottom, they have the different search options that are there for more often. So you have resources, learn, support, product support, tutorials, so blogs, free invoice generating, invoice templates. So you might go into tutorials. So this might be a little bit more specific of an area to go than to go to like just do a Google search or something like that. But you would think that this is going to be similar, this type of search, similar to if you're in QuickBooks itself.